Welcome back to yet another episode here at Rabbit Hole Stories, the podcast where we venture down the rabbit hole seeking truth, freedom, and of course, Bitcoin. I'm your host, Ian, and here with my co-host, Joelle. Today, I'm thrilled to have a special guest who blends the world of architecture and Bitcoin through stunning visual art. I've got to say, I was impressed, mate, seeing what you're producing during these podcasts. It's fascinating. Known by the profile name Satoshi Builds and the handle Tired Architect, they are a 3D artist and designer who captures the essence of Bitcoin through spontaneous sketches. Satoshi Builds donates, I think I'm right in saying, 51% of the proceeds from each sketch that you create to support open source Bitcoin development, which in my mind truly embodies the spirit of Bitcoin. So welcome here to Rabbit Hole Stories, bro. How has your day been?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Doing
Pleasure.
pretty good today, yeah. Trying getting sunlight, getting some sketches in today. So yeah, I'm going pretty well.
Awesome, man. So, look, Satoshi Builds, obviously, we're excited to have you here. But tell me about how you discovered Bitcoin. What was your origin story and what fascinated you about it?
Mm. Yeah, so it actually started in 2018, actually in the same room as I'm in right now.
Oh, nice.
And um, it was very interesting. I was in Prague, and there I was in I had I had a scholarship over, like I had some money over, like a few thousand euros. And then I was like, okay, this is sort of lying around, right? There is people talking about this investing thing, right? And then I basically went, where do I start? Do I need to get a book? Do I need to get a financial advisor? Is there like some, you know, person out there who I can talk to? Because, there are all those different things that you hear on the internet and you get completely overwhelmed. And then I went, yeah, discovered some channels, like some typical finance channels. And then I also sometimes brought this like topic of crypto. And I remember I actually looked back on it like I think a year ago or something. I always downvoted the like videos. So I was always downvoting the crypto videos of any kind, I was just like, this is just the next scam or something. And then actually my mom, she told me then she told me like, you should look at this blockchain thing, I was like, interesting. Okay, okay. And then when my mom says something, she does have to say it once. I'm like, all right, let's uh let's take a look at this, right? And yeah, and
Always
then
listen to your mum, right?
yeah, exactly. I mean, like this, I think they do a lot of things right, right? So I mean, they know you, right? So I think that was like the perfect thing. And yeah, and then basically I did that. And then I remember back then I was annoying my girlfriend for like the next 2 weeks so much about like, there is this thing and you can put on it, but then it's everywhere, but not here. Like it was a complete, like, uh, it was a complete mess basically in that sense. And yeah, just going on with the daily life still, but like having this thing, you know, had some time off between like basically it was like a vacation, let's say, or it was a time off studying, and between like two Erasmus places, exchange places. And yeah, and then it was basically like, interesting. And then I remember like one day like I was like, it's interesting. I think that's something cool, but just like a little bit of the portfolio, blah blah, blah, and then
Mhm.
it obviously gets, the more you go, the more you put in it, and the more, the more time you put in it, and then you're okay, where's the mistake? And you don't find it, then you put more money and time in it, kind of, like all the stuff kind of continuing. And then then basically when I got my first like, proper fiat job, I basically was just like minimalistically living like in a flat share and just pouring all the money that you can get in it. And yeah, and then obviously learning more about it, at the same time. And then yeah, one day I was like, I just like I always was a person who like kind of traveled around. So I was like, I have to get out of here. So then I quit my job and yeah, moved to Bali, like the classic start, let's say. And it was yeah, actually only yeah in 2022. And I think even though before and I went to some Bitcoin events and some start and then some meetups and stuff like this, but there it kind of really like manifested to if you have time to think. And I actually went to Bali to do something in a weird way kind of similar what I'm doing right now, but also like completely different. I want to like do urbanistic studies of architecture and this kind of stuff. And I was all I always like, what is this like? There's like, you can do it, but the motivation really wasn't there like at all. And yeah, and then I actually then in the middle of it, there were two interesting things that happening. First of all, I just was like, okay, I think this Bitcoin thing, I promised myself to only put my money in it, but not the career. That was like only the thing. And then I basically then I actually asked the relay people like, hey, oh, there's a relay squad thing opening there. So I was like, all right, let's try that out. I mean, why not? And then they were like, okay, yeah, good. That's like you can come. And back then it was from a different premise still because I was actually making Bitcoin 3D animations for festivals. So I was making like in the background, I made like the like kind of looping animations like in 3D. And so with that premise, I went in that. And then I had the great honor to actually do that in the Bitcoin Bali, in Indonesia Bitcoin conference in Bali. And I was with Thea Rizkita, who she's like the organizer and also the community person there, let's say. And she was like, yeah, all right, let's do it. And then I just created like a bunch of animations for them, like, in a Bitcoin way, just for them. And actually got a little bit of money for this as well in a Bitcoin paid because there was some money left over, so which was nice. And yeah, but then it kind of like the problem kind of like people liked it, but like I make this gigantic animation and you take like a week to make the because they're like scripts, let's say, and you basically make a whole script to define how it works, and then you render it out, which takes like I put like I remember I put like the my laptop like on the toilet outside of my like a different room in Bali, so it renders out right overnight. And then if hopefully everything goes well and the laptop doesn't overheat, I get like a rendering out in like 24 or 48 hours. And then I post it, and I post like on Twitter or even like on Reddit, and then it's like, yeah, you get 5 likes. I like, yay! I was like, okay, that's okay. I guess that's. I mean, people talk about like, Bitcoin people are like so open, and everything. I mean, that's definitely true. But I completely didn't have a hang of the like, how do I market this? How do I whatever? And yeah, and even though the Bitcoin conference went well, then I had then I nomaded more along. That was already like in 2024. And then in 2024, I made this weird decision to return to Europe by a cruise ship. And was just like, it's not my thing at all, but it was cheaper than flights. And I crossed the ocean, and then I chose myself, okay, I will not have internet, and to just go over and then just to like think, okay, what do I want to do? What's, in me, like with just like. And then I was trying out, okay, like, I like the sun. I like being outside. I like to listen. And I want to help the Bitcoin people. I want to help um, somehow give something to the space that people may perceive as value. And then, yeah, and remember, and give something back to the people in that sense. And I remember I made my first sketch, I think it was like with Alex Gladstein or something. Yeah, with Peter McCormick and Alex Gladstein. And then I just posted on X and or Twitter, and then suddenly I got a like from Ice Gladstein. And like, interesting. So I was like, all right, like I'm like I never had that, even though I saw him actually live at the Indonesia conference, like there I didn't have any way in that. And then and then at the moment I'm just like at this moment of pursuing this further and just seeing it one by one, day by day of saying, hey, I just wanna, give something that maybe people perceive as value and then get the whales to pay for it. And then they get a little piece of something that they can show, and the rest goes to the open source development. So yeah, that's the idea. Yeah, and I'm really excited where it goes.
Mate, that's awesome. One thing that did captivate me in your rabbit hole story then was the initial kind of that moment where you're kind of on the edge of falling down a rabbit hole and like you're thinking, shit, is this for real? Have I really understood this? Is this too good to be true? Am I being conned here? Right. And then it's kind of that whirlwind of like rethinking everything. And it does. And what I think I've got from your story, it reminds me of the incentives of Bitcoin and how it sort of truly makes you think about the values that you hold dear and how you can use your finite time to um, contribute in some way to the ecosystem, right? And you know, we've all got something in some way incentive to build Bitcoin in the ways that we can through our sort of skill set or through the way that we articulate ourselves or the sort of mindsets that we have. And welcome to the ecosystem, bro. It's lovely to have somebody who's so creative in the space and actually is able to visually sort of display these stories from quite significant. It's almost like I see Bitcoin in this stage, and I'm on a rant now, so I do apologize. We're kind of like the early adopters, right? So people are going to ultimately look back and take on the information that we've given, the contribution we've made in the ecosystem, and people can build on top of that, right? So we've all got a part to play in this story of Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like I think the space is still it's not I think as weird anymore, I guess. I don't know if that's true or not. But I see like in the Nostr people, for example, like there it's like Nostr meetups are like, oh my God, it's the craziest thing that you basically can go to. And but it's like fascinating. Like there's something there's always like I'm not a person who wants to like, interrogate, okay, like you don't do this correct or not. And I'm just as there to listen. I'm like, okay, interesting. And then what I might in my own mind, I mean it's something different, right? But just like and I think that's the fascinating. It's really fascinating how there are like those different what people try out to do. I mean, this is also like I try to put something, even though I can 3D render and architecture and all this stuff. Like in the end, it's just like I just have a pencil and a paper and it's just sketch on it, I guess. And people like it. Okay, that's cool. And I'm just like it's literally like I'm just listening to the episodes or to his quit. Like I don't even know what like it's normally like podcasts or spaces that I tried out. Um, and just listen to it and just like write down and then that's it. And then I literally rip out the like and that's something new I'm trying out right now. I'm like literally ripping out the paper of on the page and I want to like frame it in like this like kind of glass kind of frame, let's say. So it's like print transparent idea, it's like the same idea together. And it was that was actually so cool. There was a guy who actually he asked to me like, hey, do you want to buy one of those things? And I like, okay, I guess, yeah. I don't know how much. Okay, I just give this much. So it was like, I think I asked, yeah, I think this is just like the idea of like 1 million Satoshis, just like this. 51% goes to the people, right? Open source development. And I rip out the page, and then the page kind of cracked on the way down, like, well, that's just it. Well, you get this now, I like this is like, and there's
Yeah,
nothing, I
yeah.
don't want to hide it anything.
Mm-hmm.
So
Have you got any? Have
yeah.
you got any handy to show us what you? working on currently, so the viewers can have
Yeah,
an idea.
I mean, it's all the different things, right? And they're like all those
That's awesome.
pages, right? I mean, they're just like filled and filled and filled,
And
basically.
each one of those is essentially like a podcast or some learnings that you've had, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like it's just because like I mean it's kind of like a very selfish way of thinking, but I wanna do it for me so I know more about
Mm,
Bitcoin, right? And I can sketch those things down and people were always like, ah, that you really sketch very interesting. Even the architecture professor was like, ah, you sketch very interesting, you know? I'm like, I guess I don't know, just like it's just how I sketch, right? So it's very interesting how it kind of comes back to that in a weird way, yeah. And yeah, creates value, I guess. I don't know. Well, if people can get stuff to open, like you don't even need to buy the stuff, right? Just like donate to open source development, right? That's the most important thing.
Mm. I want to touch on something you said in the early part of the episode where you said, oh, usually the community is sort of like we're all helpful with each other and all of that stuff.
Hmm?
Can you maybe further elaborate on that, what your experiences have been there?
Yeah, so there was an interesting talk from Rachel, I think, from yeah, she made a talk about like,
From
yeah,
TerraHash.
yeah, exactly, yeah. And she was like, yeah, people helping each other and all this stuff, and it's like super motivating, right? Cool. And it was like on the Bitcoin talents thing, basically. And and I was actually she like told this thing, right? I was like, okay, cool. I'm doing the same thing now, and I'm also like kind of giving things to the space, let's say, to the Bitcoiners. But I think I think there were two things that I personally did wrong. First of all, I wanted to get paid for it in a way. So I want to get like, I want to make this animation. I want to, make a profit, a business, and then we do this, and we got, then fiat money, But I think I was kind of like using it as the wrong. I I approached like too much in the fiat mindset still at that point, where I was like, okay, there's like like truly profit motive in that. And I think that's why I think it didn't truly connect with the people in that sense. So that's why I'm trying it, I think, different at the moment. But however, though, I think as we see right now, what is happening with those sketches, well, people reposting it and stuff like this on Twitter, um, I am like, this is the living proof. Like, this is the living proof that that's actually the case, and people are, when you give something that people deem as interesting in that sense, it gets totally adopted, which is weird in that sense. I don't know where the journey goes here from now, but yeah, I'm just grateful that it's like this, and I just wanna, yeah. So in that sense, I had to change my mindset in that, even though it was still good that she said it, so it was motivating to go and further for that. So I think that was definitely good that she like, said that out. Yeah.
Yes, one thing I find interesting about the Bitcoin ecosystem and space really is like this concept of value, and what a merchant is, and what people are willing to separate, their satoshis for. And obviously, the incentives, from what I understand, is something has to be real value really for you to be parting way with some of your satoshis, right? So it really makes you think about how to generate value and incentivize people to pay you in valuable Bitcoin as well. So it really sort of does really make you dig deep and sort of think about how you can create that value in some way. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think for sure. I think it's still like kind of like unexplored, I guess, in a way. That like people kind of don't really know like what is the value in it now, kind of. And the weird thing is kind of when you give something in the spirit of Satoshi, let's say, that you just give something out for free for people to take, kind of, then you get it all back. It is super weird. Like it's just not like, I mean, I mean, if you want to buy like if you want to sell meat, right? Like you have to get some kind of thing back to it, but in those things it is fascinating. And I don't know too much about economics. I don't know about this kind of stuff, so I'm just like hey, like let's just see, let's see and learn, and see where it goes. Yeah.
Mate, just before the interview, I was just sort of checking out your link tree or whatever it was, and you wrote a piece called "Breaking Free from State Control," and it kind of, for me, it's like discusses how digitalization and Bitcoin can basically revolutionize architecture in some way. What was that kind of view? What's all that about?
Yeah, interesting that you found my writings, because that was just like trying things out, kind of, in a way, right? But I don't even remember the title of the thing, but that's so by Bitcoin to free from state control, basically.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I probably have a completely different opinion on this now since I wrote the article.
That's cool.
But
that's what I find fascinating as well. Sorry to interrupt, but this rabbit hole that we are all exploring, right? The further you go and the more time you spend in the space, you might have been like of one opinion and one mind, but the curiosity continues, right? And through that, you learn new things and understand it differently. So it's like, for me, like if you spoke to me a year ago about things, they definitely wouldn't be the same now.
Yeah, for sure.
So maybe that's kind of like a follow-up question, really, is the things we put out there right now today, should they be kind of cited in the future? Or I don't know where this question's really going, but maybe someone can rescue me and follow me through.
There's this like idea of exactly. I mean, like, you can because it's all everything you put out there at the moment, it's always there forever, let's say, right? But
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
I think if people are just like more aware, I mean, if you're just like more aware, okay, he said this in 2005 versus 2025, so it's suddenly like it's different. I think to be respectful towards the change, and I think it's also like cool to see people change in that sense. Like, oh my God, like you changed his opinion on this, on that, right? At least I'm always like so proud of myself. I'm like, all right, I changed my opinion on something. That's pretty cool. But it's always
true.
like, there's always like this one line that you go and it's like, okay, okay, and like I think I'm very stubborn. I'm like so stubborn sometimes. I like changing my opinion, and
ego, yeah.
yeah, but when it goes and it's like, all right, okay, now here we go, and now it's like thought through it 1,000 times, and then it kind of goes. Yeah, I guess if that answers the question, if that helped, if that
Sure.
go that direction. There's one thing that I think I want to like talk to Ian, where I think it's still kind of like, when I thought I'm at the end of this rabbit hole thing, then I'm like, oh, it goes further and it goes further, So as I'm always like I thought like in 2020, yeah, I already know everything. I know how it works. I can do all the stuff, And then like, oh my God, there's something else, and there's this thing and that thing, and they're actually like, and I was so happy actually when I finally understood that there was a difference between crypto and Bitcoin. There was like the biggest, like, I remember I went to like this crypto meetup, and I felt sad. I just felt sad inside. And like, why is that? And then I felt sad. Like maybe Bitcoin isn't it, Maybe Bitcoin isn't it, And then I was like, okay. And then it took like a year or something then to say, oh my God, it was a crypto meetup, not like a Bitcoin, because I put it all together still, right? And yeah, and then you get humbled like all the fucking time.
Yeah,
Bitcoin just constantly proves you wrong every time. You think you got the answer, and then it sort of endures.
Yeah, for sure.
But what I'm curious is, you said you moved to Bali, sort of follow the digital nomad dream life everyone has, and then you decided to get back to Europe. Was that because you got bored in Bali, because you saw enough, you wanted to get back home to your home roots, or had it something to do with Bitcoin?
Yeah, that was interesting. So I think the first thing was kind of like I made it like, okay, then when on Airbnb you can literally like put like a 1 month thing and then you get like discount. Yeah, so I was like, all right, you could live cheaper than from here than in Europe than in there, right? So that was the whole reason to like to okay, like why should I pay the same money here when I get this better thing over there, right? And then I went and I had kind of planned out, was like, okay, 1 month Bali, 1 month Lombok, 1 month Vietnam, 1 month Thailand, Vietnam, Thailand, you know, kind of like I planned it all out. And in the end, I basically, it was good. It was a cool experience for sure, but then I was like, damn it, like there was kind of one thing that was a little bit you know, kind of the idea of like rooting yourself and being at one place and, you know, making deeper connections, long-term connections, this kind of stuff. That kind of wasn't like there anymore when I suddenly went to all those places all over the time, right? Even though I made friends very quickly all the time, you know, and you get those, you know, those people, right? But then I was like, okay, let's maybe do the following and try to, you know, stay at, you know, because right now I'm like back in Europe and I'm like staying for at least half a year. So like stay longer. And I might go again to Bali because I made some good, actually Bitcoiner friends there during the festival. Um, when I would go back there, I would stay like for 1 year or for half a year. So I would kind of like be okay. There's something you can go deep on, you know, you can, you know, get to know a person deeper and this kind of stuff. So that's kind of the direction that I want to go towards right now because I'm always like, even before Bali, during my student time, I was always like, I was in doing exchanges in Brazil, in Czech Republic, in Belgium, you know, I was always like, okay, where's the next thing, kind of, you know? And so I'm trying myself to settle a little bit. Let's see how that goes.
Yeah, if you travel a lot, you get to see and experience many different cultures. But coming from someone who also got to travel early on and then also for work, it gets quite tiresome and it's not as adventurous as it looks sometimes on Instagram or social media with other people.
Yes, very true.
Because I kind of connect when you said, like, you know, you want to have this home base or this like central hub where you also have long-term connections and you get to know people. Because there's nothing worse than landing in a new city. You sort of did your research and then you're sitting there like, okay, now I don't know anybody and like I need to sit weirdly in like a cafe and work there or like get to talk to people at dinner. So there's definitely, I think, something there, and great that you got to be able to connect to other Bitcoiners. You mentioned the Bitcoin Bali conference or Indonesia conference. And with you now back in Europe, what is sort of the biggest difference for you between Bitcoiners in Asia and Europe? Is there any, or are there major different thought patterns and ideas we just don't get because we spend way too much time over here?
That's a good question. I think, like, first of all, the Bitcoiners in Bali, they were mostly expats, so there were not that many locals. So that was one thing. And I think they might get Bitcoin like for different, like there it's still like they say like, yeah, they play Bitcoin. That's the way how you play Bitcoin. All right. So as in trading or something, you know. So it's still, even though they had two hyperinflations, like also kind of recently, right? Um, it's still like not at all like actually at the people like where they need it the most, right? Even though right now the people at the Bitcoin house in Bali, the Bitcoin Bali House, I don't know the Twitter handle, they make like great job to like get it out there, and they do like so much great work at getting like meetups there, tutorials, everything, even in Bahasa Indonesia, in Indonesian language as well. So that's like super cool to see. And I think sometimes like I think the Bitcoiners that I meet in Bali are like really like deep and hardcore in it. Whereas in Europe, sometimes you say people, yeah, I am in Bitcoin and stuff like this, but then you really like you see, okay, they're just because in there of the greed or in of making more fiat money and this kind of stuff. So if you meet a Bitcoiner in Southeast Asia, he's probably way more Bitcoiner than the average Bitcoiner in Europe for sure.
Wow, that's a signal to get out to Bali for all us Bitcoiners and create some sort of citadel there. That's awesome, bro. One thing I wanted to ask you, because as a creative as you are, there's often these inspirations that creatives get. So I'm just wondering where or what are your biggest influences in both architecture and Bitcoin? Is there any kind of inspiration there for you?
I think like because I, at least at the moment, came to the conclusion that architecture is a very fiat mindseted. So like regulations and the way we build is something, we build something today. And that's why I turn also kind of like the back on the profession at the moment, at least, because I don't want to build an environment where I will build something that will be destroyed in 50 years. And that's like, and with the materials that you use, it's horrible for all different reasons, right? And so I'm currently, kind of leaning that to the side a little bit, even though, yeah, I guess there were some actually big inspirations were from very, let's say, architects who were after in the 1940s, kind of 1960s, where they changed from the kind of Art Deco to modernism. I was a big modernism fan, so I was like, oh my God, it's concrete only. I'm like, all right, that's my thing, And I was really like, I was kind of like trying to love it. I think actually I do love it, to
Was
be
that like
honest.
brutalist type stuff, or
Yeah, amazing, right? Like that's like a thing, like oh my God, like it's like concrete, this kind of thing, and but that's like, and I thought, yeah, maybe one day we will be able to like the stuff so much because it's like the Art Nouveau of that time, right? But I'm like, yeah, but I don't. Maybe that's actually not true, So maybe it's not true. And then when you kind of dig into okay, how those things are built as well, then you're like, oh my God, that's actually really ugly and not really, sustainable for the long run. And yeah, and so I'm kind of like, backing up from this a little bit, maybe not committing, even though I was the whole life I want to be an architect always, I was like, I kind of like, okay, I want to back up from this. And yeah, and I think the new heroes that I got are definitely the Bitcoiners. And like from, just the plebs to the amazing podcast that you have from, like the Breedloves, the McCormicks, the Liveras, all of them, you guys, the Spaces, all this stuff. It is inspirational, and it's also cool because in architecture you would never be able to talk to a person like to a local, like of course it's dead, but like to a how is it called, like a Frank Gehry face to face. You wouldn't be never able to do that. You never find him anywhere. You would like at a gala high society kind of thing, right? And then the Bitcoin is like, oh yeah, over there is like a like yours like Bitcoin developer or like Stefan Liver running around the conference and just like, hey yo, what's up, yo let's get okay. And that's insane. Like that is insane that it's the case. And yeah, in that sense, let's see how from who I learn and who my heroes are, or which heroes will betray me. I think this will also happen in the next 10 years or something, right? So
that's right.
Yeah, that's exciting. And
don't forget to slay your heroes as well.
Exactly. That's exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
After that go one moment, huh?
Yeah, exactly. But it's interesting what you're saying about architecture and that kind of fiat environment, because like you look back at architecture evolved, especially over here in the UK, like we've got ancient architecture and like the proof of work that went into that, versus now you just get a cladded kind of box with all the health and safety regulation restrictions and all these sort of things you have to factor in as part. So it kind of limits your creativity, right? It dictates your creativity. You're just trying to like make a standard box look as pretty as you can, in a way. Would I be on the right lines there, or I completely veered off from my understanding of it?
Yeah, I think I think generally speaking, yes, for sure. I think there are still, maybe there are architects out there who make good stuff in a way, but then it's only like you build for the 1% of the 1%, basically. So you're not really building for anybody like normally. And then, I mean, only time will tell, right? But sometimes like the regulation that needs to put the things into the building, like for example, the isolation layer, right? To make bigger isolations, and then you put materials in there, which are not very natural at all. Then I mean you can just take it as you want, or you can just say, okay, like maybe that's not the right way to build. So I mean obviously people need to get food on the table and get their stuff done, but maybe a better house built is no house. So I'm kind of like in that sense at the moment. So but I think there might be some buildings which stand the test of time, I think for sure. But yeah, most I don't know. I've probably, I guess, yeah.
I usually see this when I walk through Vienna, through the inner city, like if I after work meet friends and stuff, and you see these glorious buildings, especially around the Ringstrasse. So if you've never been to Vienna, there's like literally a ring around the inner city, and there used to be a law by the monarchy, I was looking for the right word now, that you would have to build the buildings in a special style and in a special time frame, and sort of keep up the essence of what they found pretty. And so naturally everything around that is in that style, but outside of the city sort of rebelled because they were like, well, we can't afford to build this way, we also have to live. So you'd often lean back to, let's say, a bit more simpler designs, or simpler styles, sorry. And I often see this a bit with Bitcoin and crypto as well. Like you've got the shenanigans of like, super fast, like Anal OS, who's always claiming it's faster than Lightning, but it breaks all the time. But then it's got other use cases like the art pump and dumps that are happening on there. And then you just have like the simple Bitcoin structure behind it, where you go, well, we could also do that if you want to. Like if you want to pay higher transaction costs, you don't need to. You could just link to it somewhere else in your transaction. Like you could literally link to it in the description. And so I find it fascinating how sometimes these things intertwine, and it's not like super far away in philosophy terms. Like I don't need to think about, super high level principles. It's just like, okay, something pretty, probably inefficient, something robust, but not as pretty, but it somehow gets the job done. Do you sometimes feel like there's a lot of overthinking happening, a lot of like glorification happening in Bitcoin or in general? And if so, how do you escape it? Like, do you open up a new page and draw something, or what is your way out of this sort of, sometimes also this tribalism against each other, right? Where it's
Yeah.
always like everyone against everyone.
Yeah, I need to be careful that I'm not getting on the one-sided things, right? Because like, because I was just like right now, Bitcoin Prague, we actually like, it kind of, got me to like show people those things, and I was like, okay, what do you think of this? Oh, that's pretty cool, and then that was interesting. But then I also like got now like invited to Bitcoin Nashville, for example. There was the guy, he was literally talking to me like, okay, let's get you to Nashville. So I'm going there now, I guess. But but that's the thing, because I think Nashville, for example, has a different tribe there as, for example, in Prague. I think the people in Prague, they are more pure in that sense, at least what I'm seeing. But again, I'm not a developer. I'm not the person who really knows the stuff down to heart, right? But yeah, I'm trying to get all of the opinions in there, and I got some also into spaces where, or like places, or like small conferences where it was like really like, what the fuck, they're talking about something completely that I'm personally not agreeing to with. But yeah, I should definitely try to capture those as well. I just want to try to capture it all, and then someone can make an opinion, right? And then also learn from it, right? So I can make an educated guess of how I want to update my nodes to, if there is a case of changing the consensus mechanism. So I get the best bet. What people then do, I mean, and then I can have them the sketches. People say, okay, this is maybe okay, like this. So they can decide for themselves. Like I don't wanna push any narrative, right? That's not. I will never gonna do that, and I don't like to argue, so I hate to argue. It's like, get somebody else do that. So just lay the information out there, see what my brain thinks, what it gets out there. So yeah, and then maybe I'm on the wrong side. Yeah. So well, that's it then. Or on the right, or on the wrong. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you're right in the sort of different tribes, because speaking with Mateus on Rabbit Hole Stories about organising BTC Prague, and we spoke to David Bailey over at Bitcoin Magazine as well. And it's quite clear that there's different ethoses and ideas, and Mateus is more kind of like keeping Bitcoin relatively conservative, and Bitcoin Magazine with David Bailey is more like, you know, it's a free market with lots of new things happening, and that's sort of like, you know, I'm not going to get into the politics and be misunderstood and anything like that, but yeah, there is a lot of different tribes. But I think there's a lot of people and lots of narratives that I align with, but I also do make an effort of listening to differences of opinion, because I think it's important to try and not get locked in and sort of stuck in an echo chamber, when you should sort of remain curious, as we say in this show, right? I don't know if you want to follow up anything to what I've just said before we close the end of the show.
I think to stay curious, I think is obviously, I think, the most important and part of that, right? And I think it is just a natural way of, you know, if you are a person, you know, there are the extreme, let's make everything fun, and there are the I don't even know, I don't think they even exist, the ossifiers, you know, like it's the kind of like, you know, and then there's everything in between.
Yeah.
And I think it's a healthy discourse that I'm seeing. I meet people from both sides. I love people from both sides that I meet. So I think and to just say, and I think, but Bitcoins, I think generally speaking, they stay curious enough. So I think that's good.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. Mate, before we wrap up, we have a tradition here at Rabbit Hole Stories called the All Roads Lead Back to Bitcoin Challenge. And we give our guests a word or phrase, and you have to try and relate it back to Bitcoin somehow. So, of course, proving all roads do lead back to Bitcoin. So are you ready for your word?
Yes, let's go.
All right, we come up with the word blueprint, and we want to sort of see if there's a way back to relating that back to Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think, I mean, if you look at the things that you design, right, and things that you want to maybe create, there's always like there's always like the way that you say, okay, there, I have this idea in my head, and that's how it should be built, right? And then you make a plan, a blueprint, or you start with a sketch, you know, right? And you go to a blueprint, and then it gets to like a real life thing. And then sometimes I think, sometimes like the blueprint in the end, like you can build it maybe, but it maybe does not do what you want to do, or it doesn't work. But it still works on the blueprint though. So and I think that's the same kind of with Bitcoin, right? Because like when you do something with Bitcoin, then you start learning about Bitcoin, and then you say, okay, it does this money thing. Okay, so I do the money thing, and then I get more money, more euros, more dollars, more yen, you know? But then suddenly it does something else. It suddenly makes you quit drinking. It makes you look at your health more. It makes you look at something else. So the ideas of maybe what the blueprint showed you were suddenly completely different than you actually wanted it to be, in that sense. That makes sense, yeah. So I guess that was a fun one though. But I think that's my definition of that, or my spinning it back to.
Yeah, no, it's a good journey. But my one was like, okay, Satoshi Nakamoto white paper. That's like a blueprint in some way, and that, I don't know, maybe other architects can sort of like get involved. I don't know. That's where my mind went. Satoshi Nakamoto white paper. Don't need to ask you, Joel, because unless you got any responses of how blueprint can relate back to Bitcoin, Joel.
I was just noting that what you guys said while you were explaining it, and
Cop out.
Yeah, no, my ideas were more along the lines of sometimes you need to redo, like if you build a house, like you don't get it right from the beginning. So you do these blueprints over and over again, and you're always checking like is everything in line and these things. And you usually, if you build a house, have like a common sense of everyone who's involved, like contractors, architects, and the people who probably going to buy the house. So like you have a consensus as well based on that blueprint or that change. So that was sort of my thinking. But I think we've got, all three of us have good answers. Well, we don't want to waste any of your time anymore because time is precious. And
finite.
Scarce, finite. It's not something everyone has, so we want to value it. Before we leave, is there any social links, projects, or anything you want to mention? Because that is now the time, so you can shill this.
Yeah, I guess just look at my Twitter. It's like tired _architect. I guess it kind of makes sense nowadays. It does make sense, I guess. Made in 2012. But yeah, and check out my Geyser fund. There you can, if you have an episode that you want to see sketched out, just, send some sets and I do it. Or if you want to have a print, or not, it's not a print, it's always original. So look it there. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
Nice, a one-off of every version that you're doing.
Exactly, yeah.
Nice. Thanks very much for coming on. And also thanks to our lovely listeners for giving us their finite time. And you guys know the drill. As always, it's time to stay curious, guys.